The new movie, Joker, Folie A Deux, just dropped. Will it be any good? How many butter pumps will it get? Let's find out. Spoiler!
My baby likes
Hello, my beautiful butter babies. So Joker, Folie A Deux, the follow-up to the wildly popular and ultimately Oscar-winning Joker, just hit theaters. But unfortunately, it doesn't hit the mark. In fact, it misses the mark by a clear country mile. Now, in my reviews, I do my best to be fair, and this review will be no different, but I cannot overstate how deeply I disliked this movie. And let's be clear here, it has absolutely nothing to do with the acting. All the actors brought their A game, although if anybody's gonna get any acting noms from this movie, it'll probably be Lady Gaga. More on that later. That being said, absolutely no one is phoning it in this movie, and each person is believable in their role. The vast majority of the crew in this movie is the same as the first movie, which means the movie has that same real-world, gritty, and grounded look and feel as the first movie. The costume and set designs completely immerse you, and everything looks and sounds real. I wouldn't be surprised if this movie garners its share of award nominations in all the technical categories. Absolutely no notes. Even the direction of this movie is not bad. Todd Phillips is once again at the helm of this movie, and he does a serviceable job. But this is where the first chinks in the armor begin to show themselves. The problem with the direction in this movie is it's exactly like the first one. It's truly like if you pasted this movie to the end of the first one, it would be like one 4-hour-long movie. And that's a shame, because this movie in tone, at least on paper, has plenty in it that differentiates it from its predecessor. But in his direction, Phillips does nothing to make that distinction. He does a serviceable job, but it could have been so much more. We'll get into more of that in a moment. So if it's not the acting, not the look or sound of the movie, and not necessarily the direction that makes this movie almost unwatchable, what is it? The script. This movie went off the rails before the first frame of film was ever shot. One of the biggest problems with this movie is its pacing. It meanders in some places, it plows through plot points in other places. The musical aspects of the film are completely unnecessary. We're getting to that in just a second. And as a whole, unlike the first movie, this movie has nothing meaningful to say. So let's get into the musical aspects of this movie. Now let me be perfectly clear here. As a theater kid, I love a good musical. And with a powerhouse performer like Stephanie Lady Gaga Germanotta, I was ready to be slayed, resurrected, and lifted to eternal life. And honestly, the way the music was incorporated into like the first half hour of the movie, it wasn't bad at all. It was seamless and it made sense. But from like minute 31 and lasting for the next 2-some hours, it was completely in the way and stopped the momentum of the movie in its tracks. It's like the movie is chugging along, right? Chugging along, hitting plot points and going somewhere, and then skirt! Stopped in its tracks for a musical interlude. Then once the music's done, the movie proper continues to chug along, only to be derailed once again by a musical interlude. Now in a proper musical, the music never derails the story. It adds deeper meaning and context to the story. It organically flows with and is good partners with the story. And like I said, the first half hour or so of this movie, the music did just that. But for the rest of the movie, it derailed the story. Had they taken out like half the songs, or at least kept them flowing in the same style as the first half hour, it would have been just fine. But honestly, how the music was presented in this movie outside of that first half hour was completely unnecessary. Now let's talk about the acting. Let's dive in just a little bit more. Lady Gaga deserves every nomination they give her come award season. She doesn't deserve to win any of them, but she definitely deserves to be nominated for this role. It's not the Harley Quinn we've grown to know and love, but her Lee Quinzel is absolutely phenomenal. She's perfectly cast in the role, and it fits oh so very nicely into her mother monster brand persona she has built for herself over the years. I couldn't imagine anyone but her in the role, and she absolutely kills it. As for Joaquin Phoenix, he did well, but something seemed off in his performance. Now, he didn't dial it in by any stretch of the imagination, but compared to the first movie, it felt like he was holding back in this one. It didn't make it any less believable, but I oftentimes wanted more from Joaquin. Like, I wanted him to go there several times throughout the movie, and he just didn't. And I can't figure out why. His recent backing out of that gay romance film 5 days before it was set to shoot, causing it to shut down completely, didn't endear him to the industry at all. But even with that aside, as good a performance as he's delivered in this film, it's nothing compared to the first Joker, and probably won't garner him any wins come award season. As I said, there is nothing dynamically new about Todd Phillips' direction in this film, and it could have been. One of the problems with the musical numbers is they're not markedly different in look and feel and tone than the rest of the movie, and that was a missed opportunity. For instance, most of the musical interludes in the last 2 hours of the movie happen inside Arthur Fleck's mind, right? So why not change the aspect ratio of the film when those imagination sequences happen? Since it's all happening up here, instead of continuing to shoot those sequences in that gritty and realistic and real-world manner, why not give it an over-the-top, color-saturated, hyper-visual, Wizard of Oz aspect ratio style? The film actually opens up with the cartoon, and it's not until the end of the cartoon you realize it's not a short outside of the movie, it's actually the movie itself. That's a setup you'd never see again in the entire movie. Why not? Why couldn't one or two of the musical numbers have been animated sequences? There were way too many musical numbers in this movie to begin with, but maybe those musical numbers would have gone down just a little bit easier if they'd at least been interesting to look at. Now let's talk about characterization. If you were going into this movie expecting to see the Joker and Harley Quinn from Batman the Animated Series, baby, you are going to be pissed. There's absolutely nothing that connects these characters to their comic book counterparts. Now, in the first Joker, there was the thinnest of threadbare connections to the comic books. but not in this one. The only mention of the name Wayne is a Gotham skyline shot where one of the skyscrapers has Wayne Enterprises across the top of it. The other is Harvey Dent. Part of this movie is a courtroom drama, and Harvey Dent is prosecuting Arthur Fleck for the killing of 5 people in the previous movie. And there is a blink and you'll miss it Two-Face nod in the movie. Outside of that, any connection to the Batman universe is completely ignored. And that was a huge mistake. Todd Phillips went out of his way to make sure this was even more of a standalone movie than the first one was. He wanted to be as far removed from the Batman lore as possible. He didn't want to make it a supervillain movie, and you know what? That's fine. I'm completely okay with it. But to make a movie where the characters are the same in name only is a huge disservice to comic book fans who will be the majority of the repeat business for this and any other comic book or comic book adjacent movie. I was willing to overlook the name-only issue in the first movie because at certain points in that movie, at least a halfway attempt at connecting it to Batman lore was made. But outside of the Wayne Enterprises skyscraper and the wink to Harvey Dent / Two-Face, there's absolutely nothing in this movie that even acknowledges the greater Batman lore. And that was a mistake from a repeat business financial standpoint, as well as a missed creative opportunity. Arthur Fleck is no joker and even says so himself near the end of the movie. Harley Quinn, or should I say Lee Quinn, as she's known in this movie, is crazier than Arthur is. And that's the only thing they get right about that character. She's not a psychiatrist assigned to Joker who falls in love with him. She's a rich girl from the Upper West Side who, after seeing him on TV, voluntarily commits herself to Arkham Hospital in the hopes of meeting him. So yeah, a fangirl. A punchline, if you follow the recent comics. Downright infuriating. Now let's quickly talk about that ending because it has truly divided people. Honestly, because of all the talk Todd Phillips made about making this a standalone film and how it was the definitive end of not only this Joker but also his time as a filmmaker in the DC universe, I saw this ending coming from a mile away. There was a fleeting moment close to the end of the movie where I thought, well, maybe it wouldn't end the way I thought it would, but then, sure enough, there was the ending I expected. And because these characters were the comic book characters in literally name only, the ending made as much sense as, quite frankly, any ending would have made. Honestly, the ending had as much impact on me as anyone else watching a dude who's not really the Joker meet his end. Even less, really. Which brings me to my last point, and this is probably the most important point of the whole review. This movie had nothing to say. It had the opportunity to be a satire on celebrity worship. It had the opportunity to be an indictment on how we treat mentally ill people. Hell, it had the opportunity to be a supervillain movie. It chose none of those things. In fact, it chose nothing at all. And that's a marked difference between this one and the previous one. The first Joker had a point of view. It had something it needed to get off its chest. This one? Not so much. And because it really had nothing to say, the tragedy that is Arthur Fleck's life and ultimate death really falls flat in this movie. At least in the first one, I felt for the guy because being the mentally ill person he was, living in the world he lived in, he never stood a chance. I didn't co-sign all that killing, but I certainly felt for the guy. In this, I couldn't care less. So how many butter pumps is Joker Folie A Deux getting? 2. That's right, 2 butter pumps. One for the cinematography, set, and costume design and score, and the other for acting. That's it. Honestly, wait for streaming on this one, guys. Do not waste your money. So now I turn it over to you, my beautiful butter babies. Have you seen Joker Folie A Deux? If so, what did you think? How many butter pumps would you give it? Sound off down below. I want to hear all about it. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for watching, commenting, liking, and subscribing. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.